huge show. He's got Tom Homan and much more. So here he is, Blake Burman. Take it away.
Connell, thanks, buddy. Catch you tomorrow. Hello, good evening. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Burman. This is The Hill on News Nation. A major ICE operation underway in Chicago. Protests expected at this very hour. In moments, here on The Hill, the border czar, Tom Homan, joins us live. So what can we expect for days in one of America's largest cities? Plus, the White House watching the response in Charlotte. The FBI now involved after a deadly attack on a public bus, with the president speaking today from behind the Resolute desk.
She was slaughtered by a deranged monster who was roaming free after 14 prior arrests. We cannot allow a depraved criminal element of violent repeat offenders to continue spreading destruction and death throughout our country.
Also tonight, a major move in the Middle East. Israel launches a strike on Hamas leadership in Qatar. Who knew what when? As the White House is now calling this attack, quote, unfortunate. And what on earth is this video right here? The encounter in the skies just released in a UFO hearing up on Capitol Hill. We will speak tonight with the lawmaker who made this video public, as both Democrats and Republicans say the government knows more than it is letting on. But first tonight here on The Hill, Midway Blitz. That is the name for the Department of Homeland Security's operation that is now playing out in the city of Chicago. Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, for example, targeting illegal and criminal migrants. As this unfolds, the Illinois governor talking to News Nation. And so too is Tom Homan, President Trump's border czar, who joins me live in moments. But first to our Nancy Liu, live in Chicago this evening with what she is seeing and what the governor there, J.B. Pritzker, told her today. Hello, Nancy.
Hey there, Blake. This is a protest action just getting underway. The crowd just got done chanting, "No Trump, no troops." But you can see there's probably a couple hundred people here at this point. There's a coalition of groups working under the umbrella Coalition Against the Trump Agenda. Meantime, Operation Midway Blitz, it's well underway in the Chicago area. There are escalating reports of ICE vehicle sightings around town, and agents continue to detain suspected illegal immigrants for deportation. Illinois has an estimated undocumented population of about 550,000, many now said to be in hiding. DHS not revealing how many people have been detained in recent days or how many are criminals. Multiple times, President Trump has said the Illinois governor should call him to ask for help. Today, I asked Governor Pritzker whether he'd consider that.
The people united will not.
Have you thought of calling just to discuss the situation, or have you tried to call?
So we've made clear, I've made very clear, I think all of you have heard me say, that there are ways that he can help us. I just named one of them. We would love to have more help from ATF and FBI and DEA. Well, let me be clear that if I pick up the phone and call Donald Trump, that will become part of a case in court that I somehow was calling him for help.
And Governor Pritzker also mentioning that President Trump hasn't called him as well. Now, meantime, we do know that the Trump administration has made clear that deployment of the National Guard remains on the table. Blake?
Our Nancy Liu, live tonight in Chicago. Nancy, thank you. Joining us now here on The Hill, President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, with us live tonight. Tom, thanks for being with us. Appreciate the time. Let me start with that scene there in Chicago. You just certainly heard it from Nancy Liu. Hope you saw it as well. What do you make of that scene there in Chicago tonight with those protesters?
Look, they can protest all they want. Matter of fact, those streets are safer to protest in because of what ICE has done since President Trump has taken back the White House. Right after inauguration, I went to Chicago. Brandon Johnson said I wasn't welcome. I was there 2 days later. And I started an operation that week, and the first day I was there, in one day, we took 9 TDA members, Trinidad gang members, off the street, and they were selling guns, handguns with what they call switch, that make that handgun fully automatic, and they were selling them to other gang members. We arrested 7 to 9, I can't remember the numbers, either 7 or 9, sexual predators, and most of them were convicted of sexual assault on a child. We arrested 2 illegal aliens who were convicted of homicide walking the streets of Chicago. So in one day when I was there, we made Chicago much safer. And ICE is back there now, keeping President Trump's promise, we're going to make America safe again. Governor Pritzker should be calling Donald Trump just to thank him for making his streets safer.
I'm going to get to Pritzker in a second because he brought up your name today. But I want to ask you, Tom, what the goal is here as this Operation Midway Blitz is underway. You heard Nancy mention there's some 500,000, it's believed, illegal immigrants in the state of Illinois. Chicago alone, they have a website that says 51,648 they have taken in people who crossed illegally from the southern border since September of 2022. So what's the goal? Is it to deport all, or to apprehend and deport every illegal immigrant, just criminals? What's the goal here?
Well, first, a couple points. ICE is doing the same thing in Chicago today that we've done for 40 years, 40 decades. However, the last 4 years under Joe Biden, they weren't allowed to enforce the law. So people are used to ICE not arresting illegal aliens. Now we're back to the job that ICE has, and everybody's shocked. So I think a lot of it has to do with 4 years of zero enforcement. But look, it's not okay to be in the United States illegally. It is a crime to enter this country illegally. And while people are defending people here illegally, there are millions of people standing in line, taking their tests, doing their background investigation, paying their fees to come here the right way. They're sitting in the back seat while you got people cheating the system. And I'll add this.
I hear you.
President Trump and I've been clear from day one. We've been clear from day one. The priority is public safety threats and national security threats. And if you look at the data, which I look at every morning, 70% of everybody we're arresting is a criminal. Okay, and so we're doing exactly what the President Trump promised we do.
With that as the backdrop, do you believe that thousands, tens of thousands will be apprehended in Chicago?
Oh, we'll see. But I said that we always prioritize public safety threats and national security threats. But if you're in a country legally, you're not off the table. As a matter of fact, if you wanted less, what we call collateral arrest, less criminals, the public safety threats, then let us in the jails. Let us in Cook County, which is a huge jail that don't allow us in the jail. They don't accept our retainers. The more people we have in the jails to actually arrest the public safety threat and the safety and security of a jail, rather than release them in the public, which is a public safety threat, that's less officers in the neighborhood. But when they knowingly release these public safety threats back in the community, we have to go to the community and find them. And when we find that public safety threat, and we find most of them, they're with others who aren't a criminal threat, but they're in the country illegally, they're coming too. Because we're not going to tell ICE to ignore the oath you took, ignore the laws enacted by Congress. We're enforcing the laws. We're not going to apologize for doing it.
I hear you on jails. What about businesses? What about schools?
We don't do operations at schools. And that's another false narrative. The left is really scaring the public. We don't, we ended the sensitive location policy because business, we absolutely are going to increase worksite enforcement operations because first of all, it's a crime to enter the country illegally, and second of all, it's a crime to knowingly hire an illegal alien because you do that in competition with your competitors who hire U.S. citizens. And I've seen it happens 1,000 times a day in this country that companies that hire U.S. citizens lose contracts, can't win bids because they're against another company who has illegal aliens paying them a third of what American citizens make. It drives wages down. It makes a U.S. citizen become unemployed. So, worksite enforcement operations are going to expand.
Okay. I mentioned the governor there, J.B. Pritzker. You heard a little bit of what he said, what he said to our Nancy Liu. He specifically mentioned you, Tom, earlier today. Here's what he said. I want to get your reaction on the other side.
Tom Homan has long ago acknowledged that he was racially profiling. As the leader of ICE, as somebody who is now advising the president on this new strategy, attacking our Latino communities, we know that Supreme Court decision yesterday that frankly takes away rights from people across the United States, is something that Tom Homan cheers.
What's your response tonight, sir?
Well, I'll be waiting for his apologies, 'cause I never said you can use race as a matter of arresting somebody. My words are taken out of context when people were complaining, well, you know, the way a person looks is why you arrest them. I did not say that. I said that's one of the many factors you consider. You have to have a multitude of factors. You can't arrest somebody just based on appearance. That's what I said. So he's misconstruing what I said. I know the law. He doesn't. ICE officers and Border Patrol agents need reasonable suspicion before they can temporarily detain somebody, question them. Reasonable suspicion is based on a multitude of facts that the officer, through his observations, takes into consideration. For instance, appearance. If you've got somebody with MS-13 tattooed across their face, that is one factor out of many you have to consider, but not the only factor. That is what I said. ICE officers do not racially profile. To him to say that is disgusting on every level. The ICE officers take a Fourth Amendment training every 6 months. They're well trained. They're doing exactly what the courts allowed them to do, and the Supreme Court just agreed. They're doing things legally.
Tom, let me leave you with this, because the president has talked about the possibility of sending in the National Guard there in Chicago. Operation Midway Blitz is currently underway. Again, live pictures there of protests in Chicago. But the operation is underway, and yet we haven't seen the National Guard go in. Is that a realization, a recognition from the White House that the National Guard most likely won't be sent in to Chicago?
National Guard is always on the table. Beyond that, I won't comment.
Got it. We'll leave it there. As I think you heard there, Tom, just trying to learn about what you're doing there in the city of Chicago. Tom Homan is the border czar with the Trump administration. Hope you come on back. Thanks for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Of course. All right. Still to come tonight here on the Hill. By the way, we'll keep our eyes on those live pictures there in Chicago throughout the hour here. But how about this? What is that right there on your screen? What is that? Keep watching. One lawmaker alleging there's a UFO cover-up.
But I do know when we're being lied to, and we are definitely being lied to. There's just no doubt about that.
Up next, what happened on Capitol Hill today, and the member of Congress who released this video with us live on the other side, plus who knew what and when. The fallout today surrounding Israel's attack in Qatar, what the White House is now saying tonight. And a deadly train stabbing in North Carolina gets emotional reactions as it enters the political spotlight. The president speaking on this today as well. I thank you for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Burman. Other side of the break, what is in that video?
Pods.com.
Wow, well, would you look at this thing right here? Keep your eyes on this, because this video, seen for the first time today during a congressional hearing on UAPs. This is what you want to look at here. You see how it was shot at one point in time? Congressman Eric Burleson will join me in a moment. He played this black and white video, which shows purportedly a UFO being struck down by a Hellfire missile originating from a U.S. military drone. Now, Hellfire missiles are precision strike weapons that are manufactured by Lockheed Martin. That's relevant here because that company has reportedly been collecting metal fragments from the U.S. military that some in the UFO community believe are extraterrestrial. That name came up several times today in the hearing. The UFO journalist George Knapp testifying today, for example, about how those materials landed in the hands of an aerospace entrepreneur from Vegas.
I have confirmed on the record that Robert Bigelow and a trusted colleague from OSAP met with and negotiated with senior executives at Lockheed Martin and hammered out a deal wherein Bigelow's company, Bass, would receive a quantity of unusual material that had been stashed away and protected at a facility in California. That material was not made here.
So the question of are we alone continues. One Air Force veteran today, for example, testifying under oath, he called this exceptional evidence of the existence of UFOs. The witnesses who served in the military maintain they say the U.S. government aggressively tried to cover up their accounts. Some lawmakers, both sides of the aisle here, agree something here isn't adding up.
I don't really know what is true. I don't know on this subject. But I do know when we're being lied to. And we are definitely being lied to. There's just no doubt about that.
Democrat Jared Moskowitz there with us live tonight once again. Republican from Missouri, Congressman Eric Burlison of the House UAP caucus. Congressman, hello. It seems like you brought some receipts there today. That video, I've watched it a bunch. Now our audience has watched it several times. Tell me what we saw.
Yeah, it's a remarkable video. I received it anonymously with what it's in a way in which I've learned is called a dead drop. The video was scrubbed from all information. So, and that's why I'm saying.
What's a dead drop? Hold on one second. What's a dead drop?
Completely anonymously. There's nothing to trace back to, and I have no idea who gave it to me. So I decided I could either sit on it and try to spend time. I don't have the resources to do forensic on video. And so either I could sit on it, but look, I'm a disclosure guy. I'm just going to let the internet figure out the validity of this video. And so that's kind of the posture that I took.
We heard from witnesses today. Here's one of them.
I heard my friend screaming, it's coming right at us, it's coming right for us, and now it's right here.
The craft itself was this black metallic flake paint, but on top of the craft was this gold, lava, plasma, some type of fluid going over and around the craft.
So here's where I am, Congressman. You can either believe that some of this is extraterrestrial. You could believe that some of this is government and we don't know about it. Maybe it's a mix of both. I have no clue, and it sounds like you don't either. I wonder, though, at this point, sort of where you are.
I'm still at the place where I just really am not going to buy that it's extraterrestrial until I'm proven otherwise, right? I think that the most likely scenario is that we have advanced technology that is being experimented on. I think that our adversaries probably have similar advanced technology, and which may be what we're seeing in this video. And so I'm just going to try to play it safe here until I'm proven. I'm from the show me state. You're going to have to show me until I'm proven otherwise. I'm not going to say that there's non-human intelligence or aliens from another planet. But this is remarkable. And the truth is a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of resources being put into the UAP phenomenon. And I think we owe it to the American taxpayer, to the people that own this government, some answers.
So you had several witnesses today, I believe 4, who were there testifying. David Grush, the original whistleblower for all of this, was there, but not testifying. He was seated next to you, I believe, at points, because he's been working for you or working for your office for several months now as an advisor. Congressman, what have you learned that you can tell us about from David Grush that you didn't know before Grush started working for you that you know now?
Yeah, David has been fantastic. Look, this is a topic that, I'm a financial advisor. I was a software consultant. I came from the private sector.
You didn't think you'd be involved in this, huh?
No, and I have no real concept of how to navigate the intelligence community and all the inner workings and where the bodies are buried, all that kind of stuff, which is why I felt like the smart thing to do was to hire somebody that did. And I think that David Grush absolutely has done a fantastic job of helping me in my office be a all-star player when it comes to this investigation. We can't keep him on forever, but because I think he's more lofty and better places to go than working for the member of Congress. But he's been fantastic. And a lot of the stuff that you see really comes from, for example, that video, consulted on that video and said, David, what do you think? Is this legitimate? He gave me both the pros and the cons. And that's kind of expertise that we need, I feel like, as a member to be able to go forward with proper.
Eric Burlison, front and center with us tonight, honest and revealing. Thank you for the time, sir. We'll be talking to you again soon. There is a whole lot of interest. There's not a lot of answers to questions that a lot of folks have. Congressman, catch you soon.
Thank you, Blake.
Of course, thank you. All right, still much more ahead tonight here on The Hill. Did Israel slam the door on any chance of peace in the Middle East. Hamas, though, of course, remember where all of this started back on October 7th. Tonight, questions about where the two sides go from here after that scene in a different country today. Is it putting the president and the U.S. in an awkward position? Plus this.
The most enraging and unacceptable part of this story is that her death was entirely preventable.
The White House highlighting the deadly stabbing of a Charlotte woman. How do Democrats now respond? Stay with us. The Hill coming back. Other side of the break.
9 today.
6:30 here in Washington tonight, 1:30 in the morning across parts of the Middle East. And a scene today, this one right here in Doha, Qatar, earlier this morning, as Israel launched a strike against senior Hamas leaders in Doha there, negotiators for Hamas. Tensions, as you might now imagine, rising between Israel and Qatar and creating a delicate situation back here at home for President Trump. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying today that it was in retaliation for a shooting attack at a bus stop in Jerusalem on Monday. 6 people killed. Hamas claimed responsibility. Netanyahu also referenced, of course, the October 7th attack.
These are the same terrorists terrorist chiefs who planned, launched, and celebrated the horrific massacres of October 7th. I promised that Israel would reach those who perpetrated this horror. And today, Israel and I have kept that promise.
Here's part of the tricky situation, though, here for the United States. Qatar is a key U.S. ally, sitting more than 1,000 miles away from Israel, but the country now reportedly pulling out of possible mediation efforts. Qatar's foreign ministry condemning the strikes earlier today. All this as President Trump has been pushing for a peace deal, if nothing else, a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, and to try to get the remaining hostages out. Our Kelly Meyer, live from the White House today on this response. Kelly, it was Caroline Leavitt at that podium behind you today, and she was asked about what the president views with all this.
Yeah, and it really seems like the White House, both the White House press secretary that you mentioned there speaking at this podium behind me, and the president really trying to tread carefully on this one as to not upset either ally here, Qatar, who Trump has grown friendlier with over the last several months. We saw that trip when we were there in Doha, building those relationships with partners in the Middle East. And he doesn't want to upset the ally of Israel either. Here's what the White House press secretary had to say.
Unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally of the United States that is working very hard and bravely taking risks with us to broker peace, does not advance Israel or America's goals. However, eliminating Hamas, who have profited off the misery of those living in Gaza, is a worthy goal.
So President Trump's Truth Social post basically saying the same thing, Blake, not saying whether or not the U.S. was notified by Israel. All the White House was saying today, the White House press secretary, saying that the White House was notified by the U.S. military. He also said, the president also said in his post that he immediately directed Special Envoy Steve Witkoff to inform the Qataris, but it was too late. And that's something that I've been hearing from my sources I've been talking with throughout the day, that they are frustrated that they weren't told ahead of time, especially after the Qataris say they told the U.S. ahead of time, ahead of those strikes from Iran, those retaliatory strikes back in June after the U.S. attacked Iran's nuclear sites. They also helped defend that U.S. airbase there, the largest military installation in the Middle East, so they were frustrated over that. The president, though, tonight also talking about the Princeton student that is now free after being held by Hezbollah in Iraq. Blake.
Kelly Meyer, live for us tonight inside the White House. Kelly, thank you. With us now, he is, of course, the Republican senator from the state of Wisconsin, Ron Johnson, member of the Homeland Security Committee, back with us once again here on the Hill. Senator, always nice to see you. What's the balance here?
Well, first of all, I would not want to be an enemy of the state of Israel, certainly not one of the leaders. And listen, I kind of agree with President Trump's sentiments. President Trump wants peace. This probably doesn't promote it all that much, but let's face it, it is Hamas that claimed credit for another terrorist attack in Israel. Israel has every right to defend itself. Who does not want peace in the Middle East is Hamas. So they have to be defeated. This is one of the ways you defeat it. It's unfortunately that these people were in Qatar, and I understand that sensitivity, but I think the sentiment here, at least among Republicans I've talked to and seen their statements, is they're by and large supportive of what Israel did here. We want to see Hamas destroyed.
Senator, there's some news that just popped in the last, I don't know, hour and a half or so that I want to get your take on a different matter, which is the Supreme Court is going to overhear the tariff case in November. They're going to fast track this and hear it in a couple months. Last time I talked to you, you were sort of wait and see on the issue of tariffs. Do you want the Supreme Court to uphold the president's ability to enact his tariff policy?
I want the issue decided. I understand to a certain extent the legal issues, and from my standpoint, I don't think all the damage I thought that might be done by the generalized tariff that really hasn't panned out. So I think overall the generalized 10% tariff probably is not going to be particularly damaging. What's damaging is just the instability of people not knowing what tariff rates are we going to be charged. I mean, are we going to be able to import goods for components to manufacturing of products that we export, that type of thing. So I just want this settled. I want some certainty. I want some stability. And exactly what we end up with, whether generalized tariffs or we continue with the trade wars and keep twisting our trading partners' arms to provide fairer trade, which they don't do. I mean, I understand what President Trump is trying to accomplish here, and so many people, even those that are getting harmed by the tariffs in their business, generally support what President Trump is attempting to do. They just wish they weren't feeling the pain.
I should note to our audience here on News Nation, those listening to us on Sirius XM, you're also on the Budget and Finance Committee, which is why I bring it up to you. I hear you on certainty, and of course everyone wants certainty, markets want certainty, et cetera. Do you want, though, the tariffs to be upheld, which would allow the president to go down this path?
What I'd like is I'd like to see Congress claw back the authority it's granted to successive administrations. And exactly what that authority is, well, that's what the Supreme Court is going to decide. So get that decided, and then we can take it from there.
All right, Senator Ron Johnson with us tonight, Republican from the state of Wisconsin. Always appreciate the time, sir. Nice to see you.
Have a great night.
You too. All right, still to come tonight. Here on the Hill, the fatal train stabbing of the Ukrainian refugee is now becoming one of the top issues over at the White House.
A public transportation system in a major American city was more dangerous than the active war zone that she left.
So how do Democrats respond after this gruesome attack, this murder in North Carolina? This being highlighted by the White House, it's becoming political as well in a state that is going to have a lot of eyes on it next year. Full panel, other side of the break.
Bill O'Reilly uncovers the world's most ruthless men, past and present, exposed.
Evil is contagious.
Leland Vittert hosts Bill O'Reilly, Confronting Evil, tomorrow, 10/9 Central, only on News Nation.
This is obviously a horrible situation, because no one should sit in fear when they sit on the light rail. If you sit in fear on the light rail, you sit in fear when you walk around the streets of our center city, like I do every day. You sit in fear when you go to our parks, like I do with my daughter.
The U.S. Attorney for the Western District of North Carolina today, you can see there emotional as he announced federal charges for the fatal stabbing of a Ukrainian refugee on Charlotte's commuter train. Though the incident happened last month, it has now become a political flashpoint. This is how the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, started the press briefing today.
Today, I would like to address the tragedy that has not received nearly enough media attention, the brutal murder of Irina Zarutska. Here are the facts that many outlets have shamefully and intentionally failed to report until President Trump drew attention to it.
President Trump today putting out this video as well to the White House social media account.
For far too long, Americans have been forced to put up with Democrat-run cities that set loose savage, bloodthirsty criminals to prey on innocent people.
Irina Zurutska was just 23 years old. If Republicans are now branding themselves as the anti-crime party, moving from city to city to repeat claims of success that we have seen them make here in Washington, D.C., how did Democrats respond? Full panel here with me now. Lauren Tomlinson is a Republican strategist. Lindsey Granger, co-host of Rising on the Hill. Scott Bolden, News Nation political contributor. And May Mailman, former senior policy strategist for the White House, current special government employee working on university policy. Hello to you all. Thanks for being here. Nice to have you in. The White House started the briefing, Lindsey, talking about this. We've obviously reported on this story over the last 2 days, the president taking to social media, posting a video about this. And really the question here with the White House on highlighting this case and talking about it is, how do Democrats respond here?
Yeah, I think the first thing to do is step back and say this was a tragedy across the board. The governor and mayor unfortunately responded too late to when they were pressured a little bit to respond. And so I would have preferred to see them get ahead of this, especially locally in front of people that are, their constituents. However, I don't think that public safety is the partisan issue here. The partisan issue is whether you implement government overreach as the solution. And so what I'd love to see is some bipartisan support on doing things like the governor asked. He said he needs more funding to have more cops. Well, I grew up in New York. Cops inside of subways prevent people who don't pay fares from jumping the gate and riding the train. But that is one solution. But then there's many people who dropped the ball here, from the judge who's now being reviewed to, the fact that the mental health issue was not even addressed in any real way.
It's probably not realistic to put a police officer on every single bus, I would imagine.
Well, but he hopped two things, correct? Didn't he hop the subway and the bus in order to? So, and my point is, like, he's been moving around in this way freely, and that's because there's just far too little police in the city.
Well, as a former prosecutor in New York City, it's really dangerous to put cops on every car because of especially if they're going to be using their weapons or they're going to be trying to break up crime. In New York, what we used to do is if the crime is committed and you're there and you're undercover, you let that person or that group get off the platform and you've called ahead, and then you arrest them on the platform.
But the White House here is saying Roy Cooper didn't do anything, the current governor didn't do anything.
Listen, this should not be a red state or blue state issue. Just stop it, okay? Listen, you look at that video. If you go back to that video, right, you could have had the National Guard and police right there on that car, in that transportation car. Could have had them right there. And that mentally ill person got up and stabbed that young woman. Horrific. No one should have to go through that. But unfortunately, if you don't have crime prevention programs along with community policing and police presence, right, and mental health, it's expensive to keep crime down and to do mental health programs, which is why most states just don't put enough in there.
Charlotte has a lot of those types of programs. That's the problem, right? So you have the leftist
programs are the problem?
The focus on the programs rather than the focus of keeping this man off the street. How many times has he been released from prison? And this is a purposeful leftist policy. So like the MacArthur Foundation, which is a leftist think tank and sort of community program, they've spent millions of dollars on exactly that, on community policing, on alternatives to detention, those sorts of things. And guess who it doesn't serve? The people who live there. So I think as long as Democrats keep saying either that crime is not a problem, which I think is J.B. Pritzker's angle, or crime is a problem, but it wasn't us, I think either of those messages are not going to be effective.
Lauren, here's Roy Cooper, who the former governor running for senator, excuse me. Roy Cooper knows North Carolinians need to be safe in their communities. He spent his career prosecuting violent criminals and drug dealers, increasing penalties for violence against law enforcement, and keeping thousands of criminals off the streets and behind bars.
Yeah, I mean, to me, he's trying to take credit for a safe street than for what he did, but the streets aren't safe, right? I mean, it's one of those, I think that, again, it's this issue of like the Bidenomics, of the Democrats saying you can't see what you see, like your eyes are lying to you. That's not really the case. All of these issues are 80-20 issues as far as people want their families to be safe. They want violent criminals off of the streets. Like May was saying, this guy had 14 encounters already where he had been arrested and released on cashless bail. That is a problem. So it's not that the increasing police funding, which would be great, I fully support that, is going to solve this problem. The problem is with the judicial system and actually having places for these people to go and be held accountable for and make sure that they aren't just released back onto the the streets and they do this again. And again, Democrats are going to continue to have a message on this until they start talking about this issue, not in the leftist judicial reform way, but in a common sense American way that will solve the problem for the people that are living in these communities.
I want to move on to the other big story of the day, which is the Supreme Court announcing, May, that it is going to take up the tariffs case in November. They're basically sort of fast tracking it, which means we could get something from the court. I don't know, maybe by the end of the year, who knows? Going into this, what's your thinking of as the court takes this up, which is basically going to either allow President Trump to move forward with his tariff policy or not?
Yeah, so the basic premise of President Trump's argument here on tariffs is that it's a national emergency and this is necessary. And I think people are thinking of it as sort of an economic measure, but it's well beyond that. President Trump's relationship with other countries, his foreign policy, is directly tied to this tariff policy. His conversations between India and Pakistan, what did that all center around? His ability to have tariff authority with regard to each of those countries. So these judges like to look around and say, oh, I think I'm going to meddle in foreign policy. And I think the Supreme Court is going to see through that and say, this is a tool, this is an emergency tool that the president needs, and taking it away is not consequence-free.
So what happens when Democrats say climate is a national emergency and it thus has national security implications as well? Well, it would open the door to that, I would think.
So, I mean, there are certain ridiculous arguments that you could make.
You calling that argument ridiculous? I'm not saying it's my point of view. I'm just saying it opens up the door to choose your national emergency.
I think Trump does that more often than not. Is call something a national emergency or call somebody a terrorist when it benefits him to do an action.
Because the left is just going to say this is a national emergency. We believe it, and it's just going to ping pong back and forth.
That's Trump that does that, though. That's Trump that does that. And how about left?
Yeah, but the
how about
Democrats
center left? If
turn
you
around
will?
and do it as well. I think
then you can't complain. You won't be able to
I think this
complain
is just
about
an
it.
issue with politics in general right now, that one side will complain and then turn around and do the exact same thing.
That's
but I think to your point, Congress has got to step up and start taking control, I think, and they continue to cede power to the executive branch over and over and over again. And I think that's actually an issue fundamentally with our country right now, is having more congressional oversight.
But is the issue with President Trump skipping over Congress so often? There's so many times where he doesn't include them in the conversation, does more than 200 executive orders within his first 100 days.
But they don't stick up for themselves in those situations.
Well, they don't. But here's what the Supreme Court is going to look at.
Okay.
Does he have the power to do it? And May, I think you'll agree with this. Or does Congress have to do it, or does he have to go through Congress? 95% of what Trump does is for efficiency purposes, by expanding his executive power so he doesn't have to go through Congress. And Congress has essentially abdicated their responsibility. So the one big issue for the Supreme Court to look at is, does he have the power to do this? Is there a factual legal pathway to giving him that power, or is this still remains within Congress and he's got to go to Congress?
I'm going to give May the last word here. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, the Supreme Court, I think, is going to hear what the consequences are going to be for taking away this tool from the president. And yeah, there's a hypothetical of the other guys might do it. But at the end of the day, for big emergencies, the Supreme Court is going to be very wary to take away an emergency power from the president. They have been
expanding it.
They've been very hesitant to do that in the past.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank y'all. Appreciate it. Thanks for being in tonight. Still to come, other side of the break, a big miscalculation. Think about it. These are, you would hope, some of the best number crunchers in the business, right? My gosh, did they miss it? I'll explain it and what's trending on the other side of the break.
9 today.
Just 3 minutes away, Elizabeth Vargas Reports is coming up here on News Nation. She has more on that bombshell new UFO video of an orb deflecting a Hellfire missile that's coming up just after the end of The Hill here, just a few minutes away. All right, if you're just getting home, time to check up on some of the stories that are trending right now on thehill.com. White House briefing today. They briefed the press amid immigration raids. If you watched us here at the top of the show, we had Tom Homan, the border czar, on what's going on in Chicago. Then this one's no bueno. New report shows math, reading, science scores for some students down since 2019. You have to wonder if what happened during COVID is now starting to catch up to students all across the country. And then finally this. Cracker Barrel ditching another part of its rebrand. Does not reflect what you love. They were possibly going to remodel some of the interiors of the stores, and now they're saying that's not happening. For more of those stories, all you have to do is scan the QR code on your screen or just head on over to thehill.com. All right, time for my take now. The NFL officially wrapped up the first week of its season, and the top 3 star QBs, you see them there, completing nearly a combined 70% of their passes. Incredible accuracy for an NFL QB. However, when you talk about accurate, pretty accurate just doesn't cut it. If you happen to work at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we learned today that BLS overreported the total number of jobs added to the U.S. economy over a 12-month period by almost 1,911,000 to be precise. It's the Bureau's biggest miscalculation in at least a decade. Now, this isn't something a little whiteout takes care of. The jobs numbers help the Federal Reserve set interest rate policies, which eventually trickle down to possibly things like your mortgage loan, your car loan, or rates on your credit card. I'm not here to tell you that President Trump's August firing of the head of the BLS was right or wrong. And I'm not here to tell you that Donald Trump or Jay Powell is right or wrong on interest rate policy. But here's what I do know. We do a lot of really cool things in this country, like blasting rockets into outer space, engineering robots to do anything from defusing bombs to doing your taxes. And all of that requires some pretty advanced math. So here's the million-dollar question to consider, probably even more than that. What technology can we lean into to make sure that we're not off by nearly 1 million jobs again? I thank you so much for watching us tonight here on The Hill. I'm Blake Burman. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a good one.